The Brother's Son is a show that I've been really excited to watch. After hearing that this is the final season for Cobra Kai, I was wondering where am I going to get my next fix from? And The Brother's Son is definitely something that I've been raring to watch. It's felt like in this transition period, when we're saying goodbye to one show, Netflix has come up with something that's amazing. Has Netflix's season 1 of The Brother's Son added something new and exciting to Netflix and its genre? The triads are out of the shadows and into the spotlight, being unveiled in America. The triad family, associated under the Jade Dragons, have strategically positioned themselves, but all that was planned and executed is about to come undone in season 1 of the Netflix series. The Son family are the leaders of the triad organization formerly known as the Jade Dragon. Big Son, the father, is the head of the family, with the eldest son, Charles, being his muscle and henchman, living in Taiwan where they executed their operations and maintained their control. Eileen, who is the mother, and also known as the Rolodex for her knowledge and strategic mind, lives in Los Angeles with her youngest son, Bruce, who is a very ordinary boy who is labelled as a good boy and someone that I would describe as being a bit of a loner and nerd. Things are kicked off when Charles has had an assassination attempt on his life, which sees Big Son get shot while on his visit to check up on his son. The Jade Dragons have their suspicions, but need to work on uncovering who the culprit triad organisation is behind this attack. Charles is tasked with going to America to protect his mother and brother, who he hasn't seen since they originally left him all those years ago. But upon his arrival, he is put straight to work on uncovering the mystery. Season 1 kicks the new series off extremely well. It introduces a fresh new storyline that is highly captivating and keeps the audience hooked. It's also coupled with a load of plot twists, as well as the suspense, and don't even get me started on the character development, as well as the character relation development. But on top of all of this to keep you hooked, we've got really impressive visuals and amazing cinematography that is consistently woven throughout. We're getting 8 episodes that are roughly made up of around 45 to 55 minutes in length. Now, the plot and storyline for the show had so much going on, and what made it extra special for me was the fact that they were able to balance so many different genres that sort of piled into this. They had action, comedy, romance, and it all played a part in bringing a successful outcome to this show. And the reason I say that is because it added something extra to what was already a brilliant storyline. Now, what makes this show so great is that it keeps you hooked throughout based on the number of surprises that crop up within the story itself, which holds your attention. Now, this story is all centered around the Son family, who are known as the lead family of the Jade Dragon triads. We start off in Taiwan with Charles' son and Big Son. Now, Charles' son has had an assassination attempt on his life, and he manages to deal with that situation. But what we're shown is a character that is cutthroat. He is ruthless to begin with, and he is the right-hand man of Big Son, who is the leader. Now, in that opening scene and in the beginning of the show, you are given justification as to why he is the right-hand man, because he will do the unthinkable, and he is known for being a legend, and people fear his name if he has been tasked with a mission that has them in their way. Big Son, after things die down, accompanies a wider group that go to check up on Charles to make sure that he's okay. But in doing so, ends up getting shot. From that, he is then rushed to hospital, where he is kept on guard, round watch supervision, whilst Charles has been tasked to go and protect the family in Los Angeles, and those two individuals being his mother and his younger brother. Now, if we pivot our attention to Eileen being the mother and Bruce being the youngest son, it's a completely different kettle of fish. Eileen and Bruce in the beginning being completely ordinary. Nothing special about them. They are a very ordinary mother and son. Eileen has a normal job. She has her friends and has certain activities that she goes out to do during the week. Bruce I would describe as being a bit of a loner and very nerdy, but aspires to have that luxury car, be the main man, ultimately something that he thinks he will never be. But Charles, now needing to go to Los Angeles, also needs to uncover the truth behind who is responsible for the assassination attempt on his life as well as his father. Meanwhile, Big Son is pretending to be in a coma, and the reason for that is because he's biding his time to strategically uncover the mystery and allow the enemy to present themselves. As Eileen, Bruce and Charles move closer to the truth, to uncover the hidden triad organisation that have newly formed, being the Boxers, it brings a false sense of security to the playing field, and Big Son begins to implement his plan after having a visit from Eileen further down the line. Because of the scene setting in the very beginning, where you've got one half of a family being absolutely ruthless triad gang organisation with all the money and power and influence, and on the other half you've got a very ordinary mother and son, it gives such a feel of excitement around the story in its entirety, which also has the character development feed right in to playing a huge role in the progression of the story arc. Now, when it comes to plot holes, I had to really think about this because for me personally, I really enjoyed the show and I needed to find one, and I think I've narrowed it down to Grace's role within the Boxers organisation. Now, Grace goes to the same school as Bruce, and as the audience in the beginning, we're led to believe that she is befriending him, and as their relationship progresses, it's becoming more. And at one point in the story, it does become more. But Grace is doing this to strategically position herself to get closer to the Son family, hiding her true identity to gain the knowledge of the triad leaders. Now, in episode 6, she manages to get Bruce on his own by making up a situation that has happened at a youth centre that she works at, which is totally not true, and is actually one of the headquarters of the Boxers organisation, which then allows the audience to see the big reveal. Now, that reveal of Grace being a leader of the Boxers introduces a plot hole because her sudden rise to this position of power lacks proper setup or explanation. Now, this abrupt development leaves a lot of questions around her background, how she gained such influence, ultimately creating a bit of a gap in the storyline. Now, there are a few lingering questions for me. What is the full extent of Grace's backstory? What are Eileen's true intentions? And what are Big Son's plans now that his deception has been revealed? Now, the show stars Michelle Yeoh as Eileen's son, Justin Chen as Charles' son, Sam Sung Lee as Bruce's son, Jun Lee as TK, Alice Hoon as Mei and June Song, Hingdi Kwon as Alexis Kong, Madison Hu as Grace, Johnny Colt as Big Son, John Zhang as Blood Boots, and Jenny Yang as Zing. Now, who are the ones to watch in season 1? And the ones to watch for me are Big Son, Charles, Eileen, Bruce, TK, Alexis, Grace, June, Blood Boots, and Zing. Now, who is the one to watch out of the ones to watch? Because even when narrowing down these characters, it still became really tough. But now the one to watch for me is Bruce. And the reason why I've chosen this character as the one to watch is because this character has brought something extra special to the show. Because we're brought into a world where everything is very, very serious. And then enter Bruce, and he kicks off the whole funny element and humorous side of the show. And it was really, really enjoyable to watch because he brought that balance in. And I thought that actually played a significant role to the story. And the other thing I like about this character is his character arc. Now, when it comes to the character development, I thought there was a lot of shifting around the character arcs themselves. And what I really liked about that was the fact that it brought that emotional element into the fold with this series a lot more. and it made it a lot more impactful as well. Now, kicking things off with Eileen, it's incredible to see her transformation from a protective mother into a ruthless queen of the Jade Dragon organization. Now, in the beginning, Eileen is very, very ordinary and lives a pretty, I don't want to say boring, but there isn't anything exciting around her life. She is very, very, very ordinary. But when Charles comes into the picture in episode 1, that's where things start to elevate and begin that transitional shift for Eileen. From dicing up the body that Charles leaves in the beginning in her kitchen, being all knowing when it comes to the knowledge that she has around the triad leaders, her strategic moves that she lays out when she's trying to uncover and finally engages with the Boxer organization, leading into being really power hungry to be the leader of all leaders of the triad organizations. And if that wasn't enough, she can fight. And after all of this is rounded off, in the final episode of the season, we see her fulfilling what she wanted to when she comes out at the tail end of that character arc development. And this is all rounded off in the final episode of the season, where we see her embark on her mission and finally getting what she wanted by choice, as we come to the tail end of that character arc, where she's going to unite what is remaining of the leaderless triad organizations to ultimately become the leader of all of them. The transformation that we see here with this character is brilliantly written and excellently portrayed, making it an exciting watch and playing a significant impact on the overall story. And I also think that because she's so strategic, hence being given the name of Rolodex, which is that she knows every single triad leader, every move that she makes being so strategic, but she is also fair with people, makes me think that she would be an excellent leader. Now, shifting our focus to Charles' son, for me, he had such a great shift from being a brutal right-hand man to exploring a more softer side, reconnecting with his emotions and life. Now, in the beginning, he is the biggest badass there is going. When people say his name, they fear him, and he has got the nickname Chairleg because he brutally murdered someone when he was not even a teenager, and from then on has learnt to switch off his emotions. But in doing so, he has no idea how to emotionally connect with people. But as we progress through the story, Bruce, Eileen and Alexis all play a significant part in reconnecting his emotions back to himself. In that first phase of the series, we're sort of in the knowing and understanding why he is very disconnected from any emotions. And as we progress, little by little, we see that light bulb moment. In the first instance, his interaction with churros. He's lit up when he's seen and eaten them, and you see that sort of softer side come out in his facial expressions. When he starts to explore baking in a little bit more detail, he again comes to life through his facial expressions, and also his body comes across a little bit less tense. And what I also really like about the writing in this series is that they don't introduce the reasoning behind him being like that straight away, and they develop his character really, really nicely. It's only around episode 4 in the series that he shares the story with Bruce about him getting the nickname Chairleg and that incident. And even in that flashback, by the way, that was done brilliantly in terms of the mood and lighting and the differentiation to distinguish that we've gone back in time. Because of the influence that these three characters have had on him, we slowly start to see him staircase back towards his emotions. And in the last episode, it's really, really cool because we think that he's gonna finally get that fairy tale ending where his mother wants him to live his life doing the things that he enjoys, falling in love, working in his bakery where she actually buys him a restaurant. And instead, right at the very end, he decides that even though he wants to do that, protecting the family comes first, and he wants to go and help his mother. But not just help his mother, he also wants to reconnect and have that time that he never got with his mother in parallel while she's embarking on her quest. This shift is really interesting to see. from a ruthless enforcer to someone seeking emotional connection adds a real deep layer of complexity into the story. It really humanises him, making his arc one of the most intriguing transformations in the show. Next is Bruce Sun. Bruce Sun gave a humorous and surprising transformation. Once the sheltered baby of the family, kept far away from the triads world, evolving from a scared, nerdy outsider to fully embracing his family's way of life to a certain degree. In the beginning with this character, everything is going wrong for him. We see him in one scene where he is a taxi driver and he's gone to pick up these two girls from a nightclub. They both get in the back of his cab. He's got cool music playing and he tries to use an opening line to them, which sees them one by one throw up in his car and on him. You see him in school where he's completely defining the word nerd, and his passion in life was improv. Now Bruce's influence comes from Charles, but it's not the influence everyone might think it would be. He definitely does see a transformation, but it's not of the same stature as Charles in my point of view. And I think both Charles and Bruce's transformations are interconnected with one another. As you see the walls come down from Charles, it taps into Bruce's emotional care for Charles. And the more those walls come down, the more of an impact it has on Bruce, who ultimately buys into the protect the family code. Bruce ends up buying into the family, or the triad family way of life. And we see that come out excellently and executed brilliantly as well in that final episode where Charles is being held in prison and Alexis is the one that's holding him there. Now she calls Bruce, who sees an opportunity to take advantage of this situation. He goes to meet her and ends up crying his eyes out, wanting to see his brother, but saying that he'll only go in there if the cameras are turned off because he's trying to protect his brother, when actually he's used it to his advantage because he's told his brother his plan with no eyes watching, and Alexis is thinking that Bruce is helping her and that Bruce is going to convince his brother Charles to give up the location of Big Son, their father, so that she can bring him in, finally fulfilling her objectives, which are to become the DA. But when Bruce comes out, he does the complete opposite, not telling her where he is and making a remark to her that fulfills the transformation of his character and reinforces the loyalty that he has for his family, on top of him showing that he finally buys into the protect the family way of life. Big Son's character embodies pure and absolute ruthlessness, driving the narrative with a fierce intensity. In the assassination attempt on Charles in the beginning, we see Big Son with his cronies come to Charles's apartment to check on him and make sure he's alright, of course. It's not like he's his right-hand man who he needs to do everything for him. And in doing so, he gives off this sense of fear amongst his followers, that kingpin-like vibe. Very shortly after, he is shot, and we see Charles holding Big Son where we think he's dead. Shift scenes, he's in the hospital, and he's in a coma, but he's pretending. And the reason he's pretending is because he is strategically playing the waiting game to let his enemy show themselves and come out of the shadows. Later on in the series, we see Eileen visit Big Son, and that then gives the green light for him to kick off his strategic plan, which he wants to unite his family, and in doing so also unite the triads under one leader, who he wants to be Charles, because he wants to control Charles as well as his own triad of the Jade Dragons, giving him the ultimate control. Now the interesting shift here is not one that you'd expect. It is more of a shift into the dark side, which is that he turns on his own family. He orders Charles to go and kill his brother Bruce, and this just shows the ruthlessness of Big Son, and it also provides justification into the audience as to why he is the head of the Jade Dragons. When it comes to the visuals, I thought there were some really great elements to call out. The metaphorical scenes and then the costumes that emphasise the type of character that the characters are. With the metaphorical scenes, one stands out the most. Blood Boots, that is one of the henchmen, having blood on his boots. And that's seen in the beginning when he's cleaning up the people that have died from the assassination attempt on Charles. But then later on in the series, we see Blood Boots get blood on his boots that is his own blood. When it comes to the costumes that have been put together to emphasise the type of character that the characters are, Charles being the henchman and always looking sleek, Bruce being nerdy and dressed completely to fit that stereotypical look, TK always in a tracksuit, Eileen in clothes that make her look elegant, giving that perception of the queen figurehead to the triads of the Jade Dragons, and then Big Son showing that big boss type of vibe. We see him when he enters in the first scene with his ring, his tailored suit. I really like what they've done here because it provides that comical element when it comes to the metaphorical scenes, while also really bringing the characters to life and ultimately really supporting in driving that story forward. When it comes to the cinematography, I thought this was really impressive. Less scene changes in the fight scenes were introduced, similarly to John Wick. Circulating camera motions, over-the-shoulder shots, and the use of light and dark mood lighting. The lessened scene changes in the fight sequences was something that I absolutely loved. At one point I was sitting there in the beginning thinking, what does this remind me of? I can't help think where I have seen this type of camera movement before. And using those fewer scene changes in fight scenes enhances the continuity and the immersion, which allows the audience to fully appreciate the choreography. And it builds tension by maintaining a real-time, uninterrupted flow of action. Circular camera motions just enhance the visual experience by providing a dynamic, comprehensive views when it comes to the action, maintaining the focus on the characters, and create a fluid flow throughout the fight scenes. Over-the-shoulder shots enhances viewer connection by providing a character perspective, creating intimacy, and highlighting the stakes of the conflict. Light and dark camera moods just helped to emphasize the mood and the emotion aligned with the scene that is in motion, which ultimately plays a huge part in helping us when driving the story forward. Ultimately, all of these just support in a great viewing experience, drawing you deeper into the story, making you emotionally connected with the characters and the story arc, making each moment of fight feel immediate and impactful, and those scenes outside of the fighting sequences just feel more intriguing. When it comes to the entertainment value of the show, I thought it was awesome to watch. It felt like a bit of a mix between Cobra Kai and John Wick, but at the same time bringing something fresh and new to the genre. We get full-on fight scenes and continued sequencing, no cuts like in John Wick, emotional elements to balance out the fighting, and I really liked a bit of the brain teaser that was going on when they used the phrase protect the family, moving from literally thinking that it was about protecting the family over to thinking that it was about protecting the organization or the people within it. The cool thing about this show is that you're not just getting one piece. There's action, humor, character development shifts, character relationship development, questions that get raised but don't get left unanswered. There might have been one or two that I put in the lingering questions, but still overall, it was just a well-rounded show. Overall, I found season 1 of The Brother's Son to be brilliant and entertaining. The plot and storyline was great at keeping you hooked with surprises along the way as you move through the story. The character development I just thought was brilliant because there are loads of shifts in dynamics to do with the individual characters themselves and the character arcs, starting from where they were to being something completely different as they finish. The visual and cinematography set things up and really support the show in terms of its quality. And when it comes to its entertainment value, The Brother's Son feels like a success. And I really can't believe that there isn't going to be a season 2. When I found that out, I was mortified by this. I give season 1 of The Brother's Son a 4 out of 5 buckets, meaning it's a binge-watching blockbuster. If you've watched the show, do you think